Ladyship, my dialogue sucks. Give it here. Let's have a look at it.
Would you like to go to the store with me? No, just buy me some milk. It's raining today. I think I'll take my umbrella. Okay, it's next to the coat rack.
So how can you write good dialogue? I get asked that a lot. And one of the key things that you need to do is to focus on body language. Conversation is not just the words that are spoken. In fact, speech actually only accounts for about 7% of communication that's conveyed. 38% of that is the tone that you use when you're speaking, and the rest of that, which is around 67% or something like that, is body language. So, you need to focus on what your characters are doing. Rather than just putting she said, he said, you need to think about what they're doing in between the scenes. If a mother and a daughter are in the kitchen, what is the mother doing and what is the daughter doing? Maybe they're having a really serious conversation about her boyfriend while the mother is doing the dishes. You can convey the emotions that the mother is feeling, whether it's irritation, frustration, or just pure anger with what the dishes are doing. Maybe she drops a dish in the water, or she pulls out a dirty spatula and waves it at her daughter while she's yelling at her. That's all body language, and that conveys how the characters are feeling. You can also show us that a character is hesitating. You can have them stop in the middle of speaking, or maybe they think about their words before they actually say them, so there's a brief pause before they talk. Or maybe there's a longer pause. Maybe they just don't say anything at all. Also, keep in mind when you're writing dialogue that nobody talks the same as somebody else, so your characters need to have unique voices. Unique voices aren't just the words that your character speaks either. Just like with body language, your characters may do different things depending on how they talk. Maybe you have a character who's lacking a few brain cells, and he makes up for it by speaking really loudly and using a loud tone of voice. Or another thing to keep in mind is that sometimes when characters get angry, they fall silent. They don't always shout. Some other things to consider when trying to write a unique voice is to think about the syntax that your characters use and how formal and informal they are. A character who's grown up in nobility is not going to talk the same way that a character who grew up in the slums is going to talk. Just like a character who's received a lot of education is not going to talk the same way as a merchant who's been a merchant for 40 years is going to talk. So you need to think about your characters' backgrounds and the people that they interact with on their day-to-day basis and how that's shaped the way that they talk. You could also think about how quickly they talk versus how slowly they talk, or maybe when they talk, they like to add a bunch of random inflections everywhere and you're not sure why, but that's just what they do. If you've been enjoying this video so far, please be sure to click that like button. I started Raise Your Quill to help aspiring authors and hopeless romantics write better novels without having to rely on AI tools. I release a video every week, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of my future content. Now, the majority of people have only done academic writing, and in academic writing, you are sort of supposed to assume that your reader doesn't know anything. Remember that time in science class when they told you to assume you were talking to someone who had never been on planet Earth when you write about your experiments? Well, creative writing is the opposite of that. You need to assume that your reader is intelligent. And the way that that manifests in your creative writing is that it leads to over-explanation. Let's say it's rainy and your character wants to grab the umbrella. Rather than saying they walked over to the closet in front of the front door to grab their umbrella, just say that they grabbed their umbrella. Assume that your reader knows that the umbrella is by the front door, and if it's in a closet, then maybe write that they opened the closet door to grab the umbrella, but you don't need to tell them that they walked over to the closet, opened the door, and grabbed the umbrella that's within the closet. The only time you need to explain something is if something's happening that your reader doesn't know. There's one type of dialogue that comedies have a tendency to make fun of, and that's small talk. One place that I specifically look for this when I'm editing my novels is when I've added filler because I don't know what to write. If you've just sat down and you're just getting into the flow of things, you haven't quite gotten to that zone, and so you might kind of flounder around looking for something to write. And I find that when that happens, my tendency is to add in small talk. I can actually picture a specific scene in my novel where my characters are going on a walk in the morning and he's picking her up and she's like, oh, I have to go get ready. And then she goes and she gets ready and then she goes back. And then they're walking in the hallway and he's like, I thought I'd take you to this restaurant that I've been to. And I could probably take that out. Like, it's not adding anything to the story. It's not demonstrating anything about the characters. It's not giving readers information about the backstory. It's just, what are we gonna have for dinner? What are we doing? Why are we walking in this hallway, going down the hall on this nice date? So when you're writing dialogue, think about the filler scenes and just take a knife and this actually kind of ties into my next point, which is robotic voices. Characters don't need to narrate their day or their actions. The only time that anyone ever needs to narrate their day or their actions is when you're on Twitch and you're doing a live stream and you don't have anyone in your chat, but you need to fill the time somehow, because if you're not talking, nobody's gonna come into your chat. But once you actually get someone into your chat, conversation is smooth and natural. People will ask questions and there will be an easy back and flow. So your characters need to do the same thing. It shouldn't feel like the dialogue is forced unless that's the emotion that you're trying to convey in that scene. Besides focusing on body language, you can also do some level of storytelling in between your characters talking. A great example of this is actually the opening scene between Daphne and her mother in The Duke and I. Turn to page 16 in The Duke and I. Read it then, Violet wailed, her arm slicing dramatically through the air. Read how that woman has maligned us. Daphne calmly set down her embroidery and reached under the end table. She smoothed the sheet of paper out on her lap and read the paragraph about her family. Blinking, she looked up. This isn't so bad, Mother. In fact, it's a veritable benediction compared to what she wrote about the Featheringtons last week. How am I supposed to find you a husband while that woman is slandering your name? This opening scene does an excellent job establishing what the whistle down paper is, as well as the dynamic between Daphne and her mother. It establishes some key parts to her mother's speech, such as when she says, don't use that tone with me, that's her telling her children that they're winning the argument, and so she doesn't want to talk about it anymore, essentially. And Julia Quinn does an excellent job weaving storytelling in between the actual words that are being said. This is actually a great book if you want to learn how to write better dialogue, because every scene that I've read so far, I'm about 120 pages into the book or so, and every scene that I've read so far has very strong dialogue. The dialogue in there is amazing. I'm like so impressed. But the key takeaway here is that when you're writing dialogue, you should focus on things other than the words that are actually spoken, besides having unique voices for each character. And that means that you need to have an excellent understanding of the characters in your novel. So if you need help with character development, then click the video that's on the screen. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of my AI-free writing tips, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye!